So if you're not prepared to manage well through that, you're going to stay stuck. And I always tell people that, it's the realization you are where you are, and then the realization that you need to move. And then you need to move not just unintelligently, you need to make calculated moves, but you do them in a way that is swiftly, so you don't always look back. You look back to learn from that, but you move forward swiftly, so you make gains and wins and make what I call incremental progress with ingenuity, new levels of creativity, new levels of passion, and trying to find that what kind of makes you tick now in this new age of having transition skills dealing with the quad crisis.
All right, folks. Well, I'm super excited to be here today with a newer friend and relationship of ours at the Podium group, Kevin Carr. And Kevin, man, you know what? As I've gotten to know Kevin and of Kevin, I've realized that our worlds are somewhat intertwined between our time in the professional athlete space. But Kevin comes to us with over 20 years of serving as a transition specialist for some of the highest performers in the world of student athletes, professional sports, and the business world, serving as a human development champion to some of the biggest brands in the world, like Siemens, Walt Disney World, AT&T, IBM. And today, of the many hats Kevin wears, something I'm super excited to dig into a little bit as well is him being the founder and CEO of PRO2CEO. And Kevin, look, I want to go down a bunch of different rabbit holes with you, but tell our listeners about PRO2CEO and where that vision came from.
Well, the vision came from working with a lot of high performers who had to make a quantum leap, either athletes, artists, executives, and they were successful in their first part of their career, and then they needed to make a move to a second. And I really wanted to solve the problem of even particularly the athlete population, which I came out of as an executive, wanting to see better and longer success track records for athletes. So I began the mission in PRO2CEO and say, hey, we want to change the narrative when you leave sport. You're not expected to fail. We're expected to kind of go through a pathway of finding who we are again and pushing towards being elite in whatever industry you want to be in next. So I did it myself. I had, a high profile career, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And I've been able to sort of manage the transition and reinvent myself. And, so far I'm pleased. There's bumps and bruises along the way, but I can't say that leaving what I used to do and doing now isn't something I'm extremely proud of and want to continue to share and help others be successful in their own new career ways.
When you just shared that last week, we had Israel Donajay on, who had a fantastic career in the NFL with Chicago Bears, hailing out of Canada. And, he talked about the concept of micro wins. And I looked at, just your background. I'm thinking all the way back to your days at Michigan State, but back to your days in college, probably even back to your childhood. So many really special micro wins. Take us as far back as you'd like to when you really started to think as big as you're living today.
Yeah, so my situation isn't unusual, but it certainly has some factors in that probably wouldn't have indicated that I would end up where I'm at today. My parents divorced early, probably at 7. My father was abusive to my mother, and all of us jumped on him, and he walked out of our lives at that time. It was my twin brother, my older brother, and my sister. We're all probably 4 years apart. So I was 7, my brother was 9, my sister was, 11. And from there, we just really were like in a place where it spun us into poverty. And I could always remember my mom saying, we might be in poverty, living on Section A, having government assistance, but it's not going to be like this always. Even though you're here in poverty, you will not have a poverty mentality. And that stuck with me even as a young man. She had such high expectations, even if we weren't living at such a great high level of standard. So what I mean by that was my mom was the type that no TV during the week, get your chores done. TV is your reward on Saturday. And on Sunday, you should have been reading well enough during the week to give her reports on what you've been doing in school and book reports. And she said, I want you to read books that take your mind other places, so you can read about Africa, you can read about Hawaii, and know that you're there even though you're here in this place. So my mom was well read, and she wasn't past high school in her education. So one night she woke us up and she said, it's time to grow, it's time to change, it's time to take a quantum leap. And she drove from where we lived in Connecticut all the way to Florida. And five of us concluded. My mom moved in with her sister, and we all were in a house together. She had 2 kids, so you're saying 6 kids, 2 women, and my mom was going there to change her life. And she read about a place in Connecticut that forced her to want to move here because she was really caught in this vision of educating and empower herself. She goes through school, she goes through education, she gets trained, develops herself, and then she finally comes home and says, you know, hey, I did it. I finally got that big job I was reading about. We're on our way. We moved out my aunt's house, and my mom never looked back. What I'm saying, Mandy, I watched my mom lead herself with education, right mentors, educators, and ended up making a 32 plus year career from a business she read about, and willed herself and family out of poverty to have a 32-year career at Walt Disney World when it first opened. So seeing that motivated me to say, you know, you have an opportunity to do the best that you can by educating yourself. And she always said, you know, education is a sledgehammer and it'll knock down the door of opportunity. And for me, I just always stuck by that. And that was my first kind of major witness, somebody who quietly led themselves. She didn't have a husband, you know what I mean? She didn't have a whole lot of things. You know, she had up and down relationships, but seeing that didn't discourage her, that she couldn't make a better way. So that always stuck with. So my first leader, and still today is my best coach, is my mom. And I really thank her for putting that seed in us that was stern and firm. She was 5'11", said what she meant and meant what she said. She wore a size 11, and she had really big hands. So she put the fear of God in us, man, that we just never, I didn't want to cross my mom or the police. I didn't want no issues. Yeah. I was more afraid of my mom than the police. So she would show up at schools unannounced. She was the kind of person that would say, hey, don't let me catch you slipping. I had perfect attendance, never sick. You had to be on your deathbed. It was like that old school. And I know people don't think those ways are like practical, but they were very, very helpful to allow me to be disciplined in the way that I am today, that I'm passing on to some degree to my own children.
I love everything about that story. Yeah. First of all, God bless your mother.
Thank
Number
you.
2, though, I love what you referenced in just even the discipline of attending school. My children, Ava and Atlas, chuckle when my parents tell them that I missed 1 day of school from kindergarten through senior year.
Wow.
They're like, nah, we sent them to school sick. It wasn't so sensitive back then. Yeah. They're like, you're going. I missed 1 day, and the only reason I missed that day was because I threw up as I was walking out of the house, and she's like, all right, we'll let you stay home. But 1 day in 13 years, and you know, you talk about just what that does for our mindset, right? I mean, how powerful. I mean, congratulations to your mother, to your entire family, and to her sister, right? What a special story.
Yeah, thanks.
Talk to me about your time as a director for student athlete support at Michigan State, because man, that weaves right into your passion for servant leadership.
Yeah, I found a lot of people say, how did you find your industry? Mine came by a little bit, again, by not the most practical way. My older brother got a football scholarship. He's the first in the family to go. But within a year and a half, he was back home, man. He hurt himself. And he was so mentally depressed that he didn't fight through, even though career-ending injury, he still was able to get a degree if he wanted it, but he was not mentally strong in that to persevere and say, hey, you know, I'm just going to finish out my degree and make something of my education, though I can't play at the level. And he was highly recruited, played with Deion Sanders at Florida State. So he was a high caliber offensive lineman, but he came home ballooned up, you know, 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds. You know, the best job he could get at that time was being a street sweeper at Walt Disney World. Like, you've seen those guys, they got those little brooms and the pails. So imagine a 6'4", 350, 60-pound guy sweeping the street that looks like an offensive lineman. Hey, man, you shouldn't be here. What's going on? And it was all mental. So I saw that, and it made me believe that, hey, guys like my brother worked so hard to get to that moment, and he couldn't cash it in, even when it didn't go exactly the way he wanted. Somebody possibly could have helped him. But the other thing was, he didn't understand how to go through the culture of the academic support system and ask for help. And in a lot of ways, we get depressed, we get mentally challenged. And that got me going. So my first job was athletic academic advisor at Florida State, really to kind of work with guys like my brother. I had a great experience there. We won the championship at Florida State, got to work with some great athletes like Derrick Brooks, Charlie Ward, Warwick Dunn, you know, Peter Ward, you name it, and legendary coach Bobby Bowden. And then I got recruited to go into business, and I worked for a small firm, a startup. My first startup, mind you, at 28 years of age, I started a firm with another gentleman that was called Inroads, and we did career development in business and industry. And that was really great. And I got a chance to figure out how to start a business. And I was not prepared at that time, so I wasn't extremely successful. So I didn't do well at my first business. And then I got attracted back into sports. My first boss at Florida State moved to Michigan State. And that's when he said, hey, man, Steve Smith, the sharpshooter out of Atlanta, he went to Michigan State, and he wanted to give something back. It was the first time an athlete had given such a large gift, and I really commend Smitty for setting the pace. Back then, he gave $2 million to build the first building ever named after an African-American woman, his mom, Clarabelle Smith. And it was a colossal 10,000 square feet building that had computers, study rooms, auditoriums, abilities to help the athletes with life skills and career development. It was speaking my language, it's my heart. I said, man, I got to leave corporate and take a chance. So Michigan State, in their infinite wisdom, recruited me in the heat of winter for Michigan, which is about 75 degrees. So it's perfect conditions, and I fell for it, went and left Florida from Orlando and dove right in. I was the first and one of the youngest directors of student athlete development facilities over this brand new building. And I was the ombudsman of student athlete welfare. And for me, that was a major step. And it was a major opportunity. I got to work with Nick Saban as a coach. I got to work with legendary coach Tom Izzo as well, and Ron Mason. And we were able to produce 2 championships there. My first ever, again, lightning strikes twice. We get a basketball championship there with Izzo. I get a chance to work with Nick Saban. We turned that program around and went from a 6-5 to like a 9-2, and he left to go to LSU at the time. And then I got to work with Ron Mason, where we won a Frozen 4 ring in hockey. So I'm one of the few that had championships in 3 sports. I don't ice skate, but I'm very proud of the fact that I'm able to help between hockey, basketball, football experience, high-level coaches, high-level administration, high-level experiences that balance academic and sports for athletes, man. So what can I say? You know, I'm still connected to Michigan State. I talked to the team the week before last when they were in quarantine. And, you know, their new coach, Mel Tucker, shout out to Mel, amazing guy. And I would be remiss if I didn't connect the dots with your guy, Paul, Davis, that helped, kind of bridge us. So, Michigan State's been good. It's the gift that keeps on giving is what I say.
Yeah, it is. And so we were talking earlier about, and this goes right in line with what you were mentioning, but you were talking about how 2020, the skill set for 2020 is transition. Tell
Right.
our listeners about that.
So transition, in my opinion, for any and everybody, we're always going through it, whether you're having a new baby, whether you lost a job, whether someone in your family came in to live with you. And now in 2020, we're losing to some degree, our ability to not have the freedom. So we have to have a transitional mindset. I think it's the most important skill that anyone can have, especially when we're dealing with this concept I call the quad crisis. And hear me out on this. The quad crisis is the ability for us to manage the health crisis well, the ability to manage the economic ups and downs well, the ability to manage the social justice and inequity that is now being awakened in our country due to the George Floyd incident, and then the leadership that we have to have for ourselves to get out of a lot of these other issues that I just mentioned as crises. So the quad crisis really is managed best with the ability to have a transitional mindset. What you used to have is not what you have anymore. So if you're not prepared to manage well through that, you're going to stay stuck. And I always tell people that, you know, it's the realization you are where you are, and then the realization that you need to move. And then you need to move not just unintelligently, you need to make calculated moves, but you do them in a way that is swiftly, so you don't always look back. You look back to learn from that, but you move forward swiftly, so you make gains and wins and make what I call incremental progress with ingenuity, new levels of creativity, new levels of passion, and trying to find that what kind of makes you tick now in this new age of having transition skills dealing with the quad crisis.
And so is that, you know, you did so much human development work for companies like IBM and AT&T and Walt Disney World. Is that an outcome of your time doing that?
Yeah, I've literally had to go in and out of very complicated businesses. You know, here's a guy at 28 working with NASA, Coca-Cola, IBM, and all of them have different levels and different models for success. So I had to learn them all. And what I thought was really helpful to me is I was able to take that into a sports environment and go back to my athletes and say, hey, this is what the top companies in the world are looking for, top candidates. You can have the skill set, you're gonna have to work on it. And I know how to speak the language, so I was able to kind of put it in a model that I thought was really helpful, and it's a value-centered model. And I've been just working through that as a human development transitional expert in that space, and it's just been something that I look at as a very innate part of what you should have, especially in 2020.
You mentioned earlier, we were talking about leadership and how it kind of takes all different shapes and sizes, but it's such an important skill set. Talk to me a little bit about your time helping student athletes around developing their own leadership style and that skill set in general. And talk to me about connect the dots to Pro to CEO today and how you're helping professional athletes transition to the next chapter of their life.
Sure. I created a model when I was working with collegiate athletes called the Nine Medallions. I still use it today with my pro teams and pro organizations, and it's based on value-centered leadership. And if you easily remember, it spells champions. It means values that are fundamental, time-tested, tried and true. They're not going to get old. They're not anything brand new you've never heard, but they're ones that I've found that are most successful. When I've observed the most successful athletes in my time, people who have gone on to be Super Bowl MVPs, to Heisman Trophy winners, to winning NBA championships, to owning and operating, you know, the best organizations in the world, and people like commissioners, is values that spell out champions: confidence, humility, attitude, mental toughness, passion, ingenuity, opportunism, neutralizing negativity, and spiritual synergy. If you can begin to build off of those, and you can easily go to PRO2CEO.com to see the 9 medallions, and they'll give you a definition of each, so you can expand on that. I took that model and began to coach off of that, Manny, in my collegiate career for my athletes, because I felt like when they were brand new coming into athletics, they needed confidence. They also needed to humble themselves what they didn't know, so they could elevate themselves and develop a winning attitude. And from there, I began to look at them and help them become mentally strong. Even when you go from college to pro, that's a whole nother leap. And you're going to be working with the big, you know, the big dogs, as they say. So you got to up your mental capacity to say, I can compete on this level. And then, you know, you find your passion by doing things that, you know, find you a spot in the roster and the lineup. A lot of athletes, if they don't find what makes them grow and be successful at the next level, they won't ever see that floor again. And that's what I've always had to try to help them find what you're going to be passionate about at that pro level, and then seek, new levels of creativity and ingenuity, and then be really, really opportunistic. Take advantage of what's on the court as well as off the court. Meet people like you. Talk about business. Talk about relationships. Talking about doing social good. Talk about educating yourself beyond the game. And then, there are going to be highs and lows and negatives. And what do you do to manage through that? So my Nine Medallions model really has it all. And I really encourage people to really build their leadership through having values that mean something to you, that you can easily speak to, that you can easily transfer and help other people learn. And they're tested and they're tried and true, and allow you to boldly step into areas of even the unknown with high levels of confidence, because you believe you can, even if you don't know the end. That's what it's been about for me starting a business. I never had anybody, my brother and I kind of started businesses, and we did it without any background really, because we believed and we had the confidence to go out into the unknown. There were a lot of fear, but I had more faith in my faith than faith in my fear. And I just stepped out, and, it's been up and down, but certainly I'm very happy to have made it. When I thought I left the NBA and couldn't do better, we're thriving. Even in the midst of COVID, we're doing fine.
Talk to me about the significance of who we surround ourselves with. You've been around so many successful people from, at very young ages of their lives, all the way to, retired professional athletes who you work with a lot today. Maybe share a little bit of your experiences in observing the impact that our surroundings and the people in our lives have on those values that you've been talking about.
Yeah, the same thing I would tell the athletes, I try to do myself. Be careful who you surround yourself with. That, the old adage, show me 5 people around you and I'll show you who you are. If you're the smartest of your 5 people, then you need to get 5 more smarter people around you so you can grow. So I've always kind of felt like I was open to wanting to have a mentor. And I think people sometimes shy away from saying, hey, I don't know what I don't know, so I'm not going to really ask. I've been an open book. I've tried to make sure that I, have the right people around me so they can help stretch me. I decided really early in my career not to think that I am not capable of learning, even at, once you get your degree. I think people still need to be open to learning from other people. So, I have people who surround me, and I have what I would call coaches. So I have a speaking coach, I have a health coach, I have a business coach. I have a coach even in my faith in terms of, a study group and such. So I think, it's about, what's important to you, and, trying to improve upon that. I won't say every day I'm knocking it out of the park. I have plenty of failures to go around here. But at the same time, I'm not sitting idle wishing or thinking, I can't get something going. Even in the midst of quarantine, Manny, we're not quarantined from opportunity and leading ourselves, to be quite honest. And I think when people think about, what this state that we're in, it's not going to be like this forever. There's a new normal right now, and you can do something about it. And I've just not always had this type of courage. It had to be developed with the right people around me, seeing models of success, seeing a high level and healthy level of failure too, and realizing I can learn as much from the failures as I can learn from the successes, and some of the people coaching me not to do this, not to do that. And that's where I think the ability to lead yourself in the right direction comes from a set of people, set of experiences, not always great, but ones that balance you out. And then hopefully you have more wins than you have losses at the end of the day.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying, we're not quarantined from opportunity. Share with our listeners, who are the types of people that should be reaching out to you right now? And what is it that they might be facing that makes them a good candidate for a conversation with PRO2CEO?
Well, I think anybody who believes that they have a leader, director, manager, creator, a driving spirit to do something, but they don't quite have the team behind them. We have a bench, and I have a great bench. My bench is 2 partners, and I would say 4 partners that help us create PRO2CEO and allow us to be excellent. So I think it's anybody who has an entrepreneurial spirit. The second thing is, I think we're well equipped to help organizations who are in transition. We're right now engaged with one of the top institutions in education in all the country, helping their Department of Athletics through a diversity, innovation, and inclusion program for an entire year. And what I mean by that is we're able to help companies, organizations deal with this question of, what do we do now that we're awakened by the injustice and inequalities, and we want to make right? We want to not just have what was a moment, we want to move our industry forward. So we're prepared, and we have been working in a diversity space. I'm a professor at UCF, and I teach in the College of Business. Shout out to UCF. For their department, Dr. Richard Labchuk and Dr. Keith Harrison, and we've been doing the work in diversity, inclusion, and innovation with students at the graduate level, and it's all about preparing our future leaders to deal with issues. And I say, lastly, we're able to help in the space of taking ideals and creating very sophisticated solutions to ideas. So even my business, Manny, is in the business of looking at COVID and how we can help organizations be better at managing that. We have a full spectrum of solutions that can really help get people back to work, back to school, back to play with confidence. And if anybody's interested in that, that's another area. You would say, how does Kevin Carr, say compete in the health field? Because I surround myself, like you said earlier, with great people, and I don't limit my knowledge base, and I know my limitations. So that's sort of why I think people can reach out for us for those 3 reasons.
That's great. Before we get ready to wrap up and tell folks where they can find you, Kevin, tell me what's one last thing that maybe didn't come up today that you're really passionate and excited about looking forward?
I've got a new book, Manny, that has.
Tell us about that.
Yet. And my first book, if you haven't gotten, it's called Meet the Ers. The Ers are blamers, clingers, leapers, and doers in all of us. Blamers, clingers, leapers, and doers. Do you blame people? Do you leap ahead? Are you a doer, or are you a blamer? So I subscribe to being more doer-like. This book shows you in 84 pages. It's about a former athlete who had to make a transition. And you think about what's going on now, a lot of athletes are in transition. This book is perfect, Meet the Ers. My second book is a foundational book. We're working with the title, so I won't give that away yet. But what I will say, it focuses on the 9 medallions. And we've created a really foundational book, chapter by chapter, focused on each of the medallions. It's real stories, real people, real situations, how you apply confidence, how you apply humility, how do you use it actively to help raise your game and become a medalist of your own and get the medallions, 9 of them. Remember how Michael Phelps had all 8 medallions?
Oh, yeah.
I love that. That always stuck in my mind. I said, I want to be a medallion winner, but I want to win at life, not just in sport. So I've created a book to show any and everybody who's never got a medal, who's never been said you're great, never been recognized at work. It does not limit you. This book helps you install your own medallions to be your own champions of champions and be successful at life. That's the top game you want to win right there. And I don't say that reluctantly. I say it because I try to live that and take most advantage of every day. Every day I'm tired and exhausted because I believe it could be my last, so I give it my all through, these values that I'm trying to teach and coach into my business and to the people I get a chance to work with, which I'm blessed with every day.
Yeah, I love that. And so, folks, for those of you who want to learn more about Meet the Ers, I found it in like 2 seconds online. Meet the ERS, the Ers, and there's a great 2-minute video clip that you can watch and then order the book. Kevin, where can people find you?
Well, it's 2 ways, PRO2CEO, and we're at all the foundation. I'm a hangout person, I swear. Thank you, LinkedIn, for creating your platform. That's how I get down. A lot of people I've met worldwide. I cannot believe LinkedIn has been so grateful for creating this. So if you're a pro or want to be pro, that's where you need to be. You can find me on LinkedIn. Second of all, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I agree with you 100%.
The second place is at Twitter, PRO2CEO, at Instagram, PRO2CEO, and, at Facebook. And as well, my personal, if you want to reach out to Kevin Carr, it's Kevin Carr, CEO at Twitter and at Instagram. But LinkedIn is where I believe, I've been able to have the largest reach and the most commonality with people all over the world. And, people like you, allowing people to come on your platform. Hopefully we get to share some cool nuggets and some great information with people through all these platforms. So thank you, with that.
Yeah, thank you again for today. And there you have it, folks. Another gentleman raising the bar for everybody, helping folks get into the top 1% of the top 1%. Kevin Carr, it was great being with you today. Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing your continued success.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Shout out to Paul Davis for putting us together, Big Paul, and look forward to working with you and him more in the future. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
That sounds great, Kevin. My best to your family. Thank you again.
You too.
For more insights from top performers in sports and business, be sure to subscribe to Vision, Hustle, Grit, and Gratitude wherever you get your podcasts. Also, you can follow us on Instagram at Vision, Hustle, Grit, and Gratitude. Until next time, keep doing great things.